Welcome back to the Dad 77 podcast. I'm Kerry Briggs. And this is going to be a daily pop, which is just a shorter version of a full podcast. I think we'll see. I might get long-winded on this. So, when you communicate with God and you talk to him and you say, God, I want to know more about you. I want to hear from you and stuff like that. And then he says, okay. And he downloads a whole bunch of information to you and you just sit there going, okay, okay, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, okay. And that's what happened with this podcast. This podcast is called Life is Like a Beach. Yep. So when you go to the beach, you hope for calm weather. You don't want any storms or anything like that. And when you have a very calm night and you get up in the morning, the beach is nice and smooth because the waves have just rolled in and rolled out real casually, and everything's nice and smooth. There may be a few shells on the beach that you get to pick up and take home. And it's just all serene and very nice. It's relaxing. The waves slowly crashing, and that everything is just real smooth. But if that night a storm blows in, then the waves are violent. They come crashing in much harder. And what happens is you end up having shells that are crushed because they got pulverized. And if you try and walk on the beach and you step on them, they hurt a lot. It's like stepping on Legos. But if it's a stormy night and the waves have been crashing in, the beach isn't quite as smooth as it normally is, and there's some debris on there that has blown in and just some ickiness. And that's a word. The other thing is that sometimes the beach isn't smooth, but there are divots and holes in that. I'm going to try and see if I can, like that, see how you have the waves clear out in the back, and here in the front of the picture you have divots in the sand that have filled with water. And when that happens, we will sometimes people will walk through them. Sometimes they're like, I don't know, I don't think I want to walk through that. And it's just this not nice area on the beach. So how is life like a beach? So this is a kind of a metaphor of your life. Is your life smooth and you have nice rolling waves? Is it stormy and everything's been crashing in and making holes and crushing seashells so that you can step on them? But the question is, well, what does that have to do with life? Oh, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked. There's only really two choices in life. When it comes down to, is it the we's or the they's or us's and them's? But there's really only two choices. There is either God or there's no God. And sorry, I flipped one page too many. Sheesh. So without God, it's like that stormy night where you have very rough waves coming in and crashing, and and the beach is all disrupted, and without God, that's kind of what your life can be like, because you don't have any support other than family or friends or whatever, but no real support from a being greater than anything else that can be conceived. That's a philosophical definition of God. And you have broken shells, and you have holes in the beach, and so when you don't have God, well, you try and fill those holes, you try and fill those rough spots with all different kinds of things. You try and fill it with work. Some people bury themselves in work. Some people, it's all about their kids, and chasing after their kids. And for some people, it's recreational activities, and you try and find all kinds of things that will fit in this hole that's in the life that is missing, and you're trying to fill it with other things. Now, those aren't bad things, but they don't fill that void that is there. Sometimes people fill it with religion, which is different than a relationship with God. Religion is doing the right thing, wearing the right thing to church, saying the right things when you get to church, and then going away, and there's been no change in your life. And sometimes when you try and fill it with just religion, you more accurately, it becomes a weird religion, or a weird twisted doctrine, because if you are not in a relationship with God where he can guide and direct you, then you're going to be tossed about by the waves, and by every whim and doctrine that there's out there. And I know people who are presently in this state where they are following weird doctrines and religion. And 2 Timothy 4:3 and 4 says, and this is Paul talking to Timothy, and he says, "For the time will come when they," meaning people that he is pastor over, "they will not tolerate sound doctrine." They will not tolerate correct sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance with their own desires. This was written 2,000 years ago. And where are we at today? People are running off to all kinds of different religious spiritualness and all this, and because it tickles my ears, it's and he goes on, he says, "For the time will come when they will not tolerate sound doctrine, wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers of their own desires, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and will turn aside to myths." And that's what is happening right now. There's a lot of spiritualism that's coming in. I know Jewish people who have given up God and are seeking the inner God of themselves, and I know other people who just have just weird religious things that sound good to them, and it doesn't. And most of the time, it doesn't require. It doesn't require anything. It doesn't require any righteousness. It doesn't require you to have a relationship. Many times it is based on how you feel and how what you want, not what God is wanting. And I know several people that have actually grew up in the church and now are away from the church, and their ears are tickled and they're like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh yeah, that's cool, because there's no conviction. There's no basically no right and wrong. You believe what you want to believe, and that's all fine and dandy. We also try and fill that hole, or those holes, with things that distract us, like telephone and social media and movies and sporting events, and just we will fill that with anything, because those things generally don't require any effort on our part. We just can sit there and blindly do it. Scroll through your phone, watch a movie, watch something. Now, there's nothing wrong with either of those, but when that is what you do then all the time, then you have no room for a relationship with God. He wants a relationship with us. You can't have a relationship if you don't spend time together. But some people will just listen to any doctrine that agrees with their thinker, with what they think. I think so. I think so. Proverbs 16, which Proverbs was written by one of the wisest men who ever lived. If you go 16, starting at verse 1, we'll do verse 1 and 2. The plans of a heart belong to a person. Pretty simple. You make your plans of what you want to do in that. But the second part of that verse is, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. And that means basically that, yeah, we make our plans, but if it's not rooted in what God has said, then we're probably not going to be on the right path. Oh, wait a minute. Verse 2. All the ways of a person are clean in his own sight. All the ways of the person are clean, meaning everyone believes that their thoughts are true and accurate and right and the way things should be. The second half of that verse is, but the Lord examines the motives, what's really down inside you. And we are built so that we can just basically float along, and we can believe our own things, and we can do our own things, and we can have our own plans, and it looks great, and it can look great on paper, and it can look great what I should be doing. But if the Lord has not had his tongue involved in that decision, and he examines our heart and knows that the motives are incorrect, then we have erred. So this has gone a little bit long for a daily pop. I got some conclusions, and hopefully I'm not like a friend of mine, Pastor Kevin's conclusions, which can be another half hour. But conclusions, God has shown over and over and over that his ways are the true ways. And on top of that, he wants to have communion with us. You know, the Old Testament and up until AD 70, when Jerusalem and the temple was all destroyed, there was a lot of animal sacrifices, and you could only communicate to God through the high priest, who once a year went into the Holy of Holies. But when Jesus died on the cross, the veil, you can't call it a curtain, the veil that was in the Holy of Holies, which separated the inner part of the Holy Holies from the kind of the outer part of Holy Holies, where the priest would go in, but then he would go behind the veil to where God was. That was torn from top to bottom. That veil was 60 feet high, 30 feet long, and 4 inches thick. That is a huge, huge curtain. And when Jesus died, that was ripped wide open all the way down. And was God saying, all right, I've had enough of these sacrifices and all that. Now, because of the work of Christ on the cross, I want to have communion and communication with my people. And he does. He wants us to actually have access to him. He wants to direct your paths. He wants to commune with you. He wants to tickle your thinker to different ideas, new ideas, the way you should go, what you should do. This doesn't mean that, hey, become a Christian, believe in Jesus, and everything's going to be hunky-dory for you. There are still some stormy nights with rough seas and a messed up beach when you get up in the morning. But God has ripped the veil apart that we can enter in and commune with him, and he can directly get us through those times and get us into the good times. Now, some people may have a hard time saying, well, how can God communicate with 8 billion people on the planet and all this? Well, your God's too small. If you have that problem, then your God is too small, because my God made everything down to the atoms and even the protons, and even things that we don't even know yet. He made all those. And I live on Lake Norman. And an interesting thing, I was out on the lake fishing, and the fish weren't biting, so your mind wanders. And all of a sudden, I thought, hey, we had some rain, so the lake should be coming up. And people try to estimate, how many gallons is in Lake Norman. Now, Lake Norman is 34,000 square acres, 500 miles of shoreline. That's how big Lake Norman is. And people try to estimate, it probably holds this many gallons or that many gallons. But God knows how many drops it takes to make Lake Norman. Think about that. He knows how many drops are in Lake Norman right now, and how many drops are going over the dam and under the dam, down the river. And subtracting that from the total number of drops in Lake Norman. That's the kind of God that wants to commune with us. So, just checking my notes here. And so, this is the God that wants us to seek Him. And if you seek Him, He says, He promises, He will find us. As we're seeking Him, He will find us, and He will communicate and be with us. So, how's your beach? Is it smooth? Is it rocky? Is it stormy? Then go to the one who can make the beach smooth and not take you out of everything. There's no promise for that. As a matter of fact, when Jesus prayed, he said, Father, I don't pray that you take these guys out of the way of all this stuff that they're facing, meaning this was the apostles and all of them but one died a martyr. I don't pray that you take them out, but that you just keep them from the evil one. And that's what God will do. So this was a long daily pop. How's your beach? Because beach life is like a beach. Out.